Okay, so in the last few days I've done a lot of recording trying to explain myself. I've deleted some of them I've kept. I'm just going to chuck them all together. I may repeat myself, I may ramble a little bit, but I want to make it clear that this is kind of unavoidable right now. I mean, I just come out my morning meditation, my head is really clear right now. Going through a really difficult time at the moment. I don't mind admitting life is, contains many pressures and obstacles at the moment, more so than ever before. And it's this very climate which is kind of exacerbating the reality of what I'm able to experience and obtain. You see, there might be this, way of looking at things whereby you would say someone who is stressed and extremely creative, kind of creates experiences to make sense of their situation, all this kind of stuff. That does happen to people. But when I tell you I got balls of steel, I fucking mean it. And I am the harshest critic of myself and my situation. And the funny thing is that, stress is a factor. Who doesn't have stress? Who doesn't need stress in order to grow? I mean, you can't just lie around on a lilo your whole life, can you? Just sipping martinis. I mean, growth comes out of friction. And, muscles grow through exertion. So, all of the factors kind of come together. They've been in interplay for many years, but especially this winter time coming on, So I don't feel like there's going to be a perfect moment of clarity for me to, sit down right now and properly construct like a written document and then, record myself saying that, making a little, like diagram and bullet points and really structuring everything perfectly. Time is running out. I've chosen the date of Halloween 2019. So the first one is going to have to be somewhat of a mess that hopefully captures the vibe. But over time, my methods will vary, and it's important not to say too much about exactly how I'm going to proceed, because the future may surprise and things change. So but this first video is somewhat of a mishmash, rambling, repeating, but I've captured myself in the place that we're chiefly concerned with, the night itself and a few days afterwards. I guess what I want to say is, right now, I don't want to do this, I'll be honest with you. That's why it hasn't happened for a long time. But I actually feel that I've got no choice. I just feel this sense of just urgency about it and a sense of mission. And I keep asking myself, why that is. Because I cringe when I watch people on the internet trying to communicate, that they have this special thing, and you know, this you know, I'd sooner just be, I don't know, just see, some days I feel great about it, some days I don't. But I'm a very disciplined person, and you know, very objective, and I see so much weakness and delusion around me, and you know, sweetness, and you know, a lot of, you know, you do meet a lot of nice people who are, but you know, being realistic about experiences with human beings, and I mean, you know, the whole internet thing, just all that neediness, you know, look at me, this is who I am, you know, let me present this image and let me talk in signs and symbols to my little in-group, and just all that self-delusion that's wrapped up in that. So, you know, I find myself now on the internet, like, you know, how can I not talk about this? You know, like I said, I've given away a little bit before, and I feel like, you know, I should make a video and have it dated, you know, on the internet. You know, you can see the upload date, and because it would be, you know, it would be a shame if even though it's highly unlikely, it would be a shame if anyone beat me to it, because then I would lose my claim, my stake, my legitimacy. See, that's what I'm after. You know, I'm not likely to gain much from this, you know, personally, but it's about the legitimacy and the honesty, and you know, if I'm saying, you know, in a very loose sense, and, you know, what I'm saying, and I get it down here first, then, you know, it's coming from a real place, you know, and anyone, you know, in future, you know, years to come might pick up, you know, from where I've left off. Anyone who has a very, you know, particular ability, you know, an intuitive capacity, and sufficiently you know, difficult relationship with the lands, you know, loosely, you know, known as the Aylesford Downs. But let's face it, you know, it's been all these hundreds of years, all we got is a few ghost stories, nothing too solid. And then obviously with Sean Tudor's book, you know, he's put together this kind of, you know, case study. So you got, you know, it's all about, you know, stories and ghosts, and at the end he's saying, oh, maybe it's this triple goddess aspect thing going on, without really pinning it down anywhere, without specifically, you know, I mean, the name Hecate comes up, you know. Read that book a couple of months ago. I was really surprised that someone else had got that close. And you think, you know, like, that was a wonderful confirmation for me, because, you know, I had no idea that anyone else would start to get close at all. And yet so far, no disrespect, Sean, you know, I will repeat myself many times. Yeah, my experience is extremely personal and extremely subjective, and yet I'm able to draw on all the objective sources, you know, through, you know, reading and research, and generally, you know, being a working class guy who's got to go out and clean windows every day, and is a little bit hesitant about, you know, appearing as a nutter on the internet with, you know, spiritual revelations and all this kind of stuff, you know. I tell you what, when it comes to, you know, yeah, my relationship with the, you know, with the land, and I have a very pagan, you know, outlook, if you like, and it's impossible in this modern world, unless you want to paint yourself into a corner, to, you know, you see, definitions are difficult because you can see how everything flows and, you know, interrelates and correlates. And I mean, I can see there's certain aspects of Christian doctrine that, you know, I've actually, you know, found to be, you know, extremely enlightening, although most of it is fucking mental. I'll be honest with you, there's nothing in Islam, you know, nothing. But, you know, most religions have, you know, well, I'd say there's nothing that hasn't been stated elsewhere, and then nothing extra on top that's original, if you know what I mean. But, you know, when you look at the Eastern religions, there's a hell of a lot there, and you know, religions, practices, etc. That whole Hermetic thing coming out of Egypt, I know something of all these subjects personally, intimately, and through personal practice, and yet my heart and soul remain objective and yet rooted in a very European paganism. You see, when you have, you know, shamanistic experience and ability, and experience, practical experience in, you know, magic and meditation and all this kind of stuff, and even before, you see, I definitely identify with that notion of a sense of calling. You know, it's always been there. Before I knew anything about these subjects, I had experiences as a child, etc., etc. I'll go through all this, obviously, in time. But you see, you know, I have a practical experience, an ongoing relationship with the spirit world. And the spirit world seems to have its own vast ecology of, you know, lesser and greater intelligences, full of different colours and cultures and combinations. And but you see, you know, if you were in ancient Egypt, you know, meditating, you know, in the Great Pyramid of Giza, very likely, you know, if you're so inclined and gifted, you may have a vision of, you know, Osiris, if you like. You ain't going to get a vision of Osiris, perhaps not, unless your mind is so deeply, you know, caught up in reading them, etc., etc. I mean, ancient Egypt was a really, really, really strong obsession of mine in my early 20s. Really, really, really strongly. So, you know, I didn't realise that in my own homeland there was something just as fascinating and deep, because it's almost entirely destroyed. And let's just say that it reached out to me, if you like, and I never felt, you know, it's like, I remember looking in the mirror as a teenager. I had long hair, which I dyed to be even more blonde in this. I mean, I've had, you know, I had long hair 3 times in my, you know, younger life, and this particular time I decided that I would, you know, typical teenager thing, it was kind of braided and it had been dyed, like bleached, and you know, an even more vibrant kind of white blonde. And I was wearing a checkered shirt, and I think I was stoned at the time, so the mind was kind of, you know, opened up in that way. And I looked in the mirror and I had a primal feeling and an instinct, some kind of ancestral resonance. It was like, for a moment I saw a Celt in front of me in the mirror, you know, tartan, bleached hair, blue eyes, you know, obviously white man that I am and proud to be. You see, you know, wherever you are in the, you know, if you align yourself ancestrally, I mean, say for instance, on my mother's side, the surname is Anglo-Saxon, you know, stroke Germanic, stroke Norwegian, that kind of, you know, general area. Probably emanating from those kind of areas. So, you know, perhaps Dark Age influx into the UK. On my father's side, you know, came from a poor Scottish family. So, seeing as though, you know, Scotland was, you know, largely unconquered, and, you know, typical, you know, ginger hair, you know, blonde on my mother's side, father, ginger hair, looked like a Celt as well, had a stash and tattoos, you know, and violent drunk. You know what I'm saying? A proper Celtic man. Didn't even know it really. So yeah, there was, you know, there was that incident. I mean, there's many more. I'm talking about early. And I remember we did a history project at school on the Vikings, and I felt that same sense of resonance looking through this old book. You know, it must have been like early 80s or something, sitting there in my bedroom looking at pictures of, like, you know, Odin and Thor and all that kind of stuff, you know. But you see, the whole Celtic thing is so obscure. It's been largely erased due to the, you know, Roman invasion, and then when you get the Norman invasion, it's like the whole of English culture was, you know, pretty much just raped and destroyed, you know. So, you know, you grow up as a, you know, as a bloody Christian in school assembly, listening to all the Christian stories from the Middle East. But you're, look, you can do anything you want, right? Shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ. Fucking dog. You can do whatever you want, you know, but I'm telling you, you know, when you align yourself with your ancestry, with your blood, and then you happen to be on location and you're that type of person, because, you know, most people don't care, and they shouldn't have to care, you know. There's room for all different kinds of people in you know, a human society, different roles, and, you know, not that I'm a big fan of the way, you know, society is, or people in general, but there's different, you know, horses for courses, if you like. So it's a combination of everything being lined up in that way. That is a beautiful thing. Nothing can surpass that now, you know. I mean, I can read all about, you know, the Indo-European roots, you know, stretching back across the Indian continent and all that kind of thing. And look, I'll be honest with you, you know, I'm never going to take anything as 100% when it comes to really ancient history. I think everything's much more confused, and being you know, someone who's over many years read the books of Robert Bauval, Graham Hancock, this kind of stuff, even though later on, due to the internet, you've got a lot more people jumping on the bandwagon that are a lot less qualified and competent, and especially when you start getting into all that ancient aliens thing, it gets a bit mental, doesn't it? Let's face it. Although there is an aspect to that subject that should be taken seriously and perhaps mentioned another time, but maybe not what you think, so let's leave that out of the picture because it's not relevant here right now. But everything has its place, there's a truth in every stereotype, every meme, if you like. When I say meme, I'm not talking about a fucking picture put up on the internet with some witty fucking words on it. I'm talking about an actual archetypal idea, if you like, or stereotype, But when everything is in resonance and lined up, then your abilities and your powers are enhanced. Think of your classic shaman, his ancestors in the local land going back many, many generations, in contact with the spirit world. I mean, you take that guy, stick him in New York and, take away his shamanism and give him, Buddhism. It's going to get results, but, it ain't going to be as powerful. Probably not. I think you know what I'm saying. I have a strong inclination that the spirit world is as culturally diverse as the physical world, if you like. And you see gods and goddesses and spiritual creatures, but I'm talking specifically about, gods and goddesses here. They can be channeled through an archetypal, cultural complex and take on, a form, partly egregore, partly primal truth, partly archetype, partly ancestral resonance, partly the landscape. I don't know exactly to what degree. I hope that I will find out more over time. But yeah, I've been really, aligning myself deeply, more and more deeply. I mean, even down to, the fact that I'm collecting, building and painting a 28mm Celtic army with divisions from ancient Britain, Gaul, Germanic mercenaries and Romans for them to fight against on the tabletop, So, just really, my reading, just really immersing myself in and it's so tenuous and there's so little left, but any way that I can. It's funny because even when you're even reading about tabletop wargaming, for instance, from the the ancient European perspective, I go to sleep and I have my dreams. I'll have this feeling of connection, and I will see objects and landscapes, and so a visit to the British Museum, look at the the ancient Celtic Neolithic stuff from Europe, especially Britain. There's a book in particular, The Way of Word, which is an absolute firm favourite. That's set a little bit later on in the the Dark Ages kind of time, but it's got that Anglo-Saxon thing, which is again part of the flow, the ancestral flow, the general picture. What I'm saying is, in this modern world, and I'll tell you what, you know, I was married to a foreign woman for over a decade. You know, I have children that are half English, you know, half kind of Middle Eastern, if you like. You know, I've had a lot of girlfriends who, you know, from different countries around the world. And recently, some pretty boyfriends as well. I'm talking about you Filipino ladyboys, my favourites. So, you know, I'm not... What I want to say is, there's a mad battle going on between left and right, and the left are going... I mean, I'm with you in many ways, but you've gone a bit mental, right? There's a radicalisation going on, you know. Everything is celebrated, you know. Every time you turn on the radio, it's like, oh, you know, it's like Black Cooking Week or whatever, you know, Caribbean Cooking Week. Everything's always looking out, you know, celebrating the, you know, the minority and the, you know, the exotic and the foreign. And that's nice, but it's kind of out of balance. And although I do believe in the right of any, you know, local, what's the right word I'm looking for? Native man to, you know, have a foreign wife. And, you know, there always needs to be a little bit of mixing up going on, a little bit of, you know, that's nice. But when you're talking about something akin to a mass invasion, where you walk down the street and you ask yourself, am I in England? Am I in Nigeria? Am I in Pakistan? I don't know where the fuck I am. You know, when you can't get a parking space because it's mosque day. Especially, you know, you live in a working class town like I do at the moment, and, you know, there's, you know, a black guy just pissing on the side of your house in the alleyway at 10 a.m. in the morning, you know, without care. What I'm saying is when it comes to individuals, I'm not blaming individuals. I can be friends with anyone. I could fall, you know, I mean, I did actually, you know, I rented a room with a Nigerian family for a couple of years, and for the most part, extremely lovely, but there were differences, you know. This is what I'm saying. It's not integration that's going on, it's separate groups. So in the face of all this, I would say, as a young man, you know, I kind of swallowed that pill and was always looking outside, because I wasn't even aware that I had such a strong cultural heritage, because it had been almost entirely destroyed. And you know, there are differences. There is a kind of management that needs to take place that hasn't taken place, and it's perhaps even too late. So let's hear it for the native white guy. You know, let's see the you know, the Anglo-Saxon, you know, the Germanic, the, you know, the Norwegian, the, you know, let's focus on this so largely neglected, but I'm talking particularly homing in on whatever it's called, on the UK, deep into ancient Britain. And there's almost nothing written down. There ain't a lot coming out of the ground. We don't know much. Most of it's written by the Romans, but it's all still there in the collective unconscious, in the spirit world, in the land, in the hands of the ancestors, if one knew how to access it. And I'm not expecting to be believed, but I don't really expect anything, but I've been doing this for a few years and I've been learning things and I've been in communication, and I'm going to keep that up through music, you know, art, poetry, direct mysticism, you know, shamanism, magical practice, veneration of ancestors, through whatever combination of, you know, psychology and physiology, whatever you call it, you know, life circumstance, hereditary, and pain, depression, strife, hard work, everything, you know, love's lost, sexual longing, channeling of energies into different areas, and sometimes the inappropriate misdirection and twisting, and, you know, whatever you, in the whole panoply of, you know, whatever. There's a thread of destiny, you see. This is going to be the you know, the main point of this particular little segment of this long introductory video, and that is, no disrespect to anyone personally, I don't know, I can't be in your head, I don't, you know, but generally speaking, when it comes to paganism, a lot of people are there, you know, to post shit on Facebook, turn up at the summer solstice, you know, put a little sticker on their car. It's bullshit. This is what I'm saying, you know. Connecting with the ancestors and having something to show for it involves suffering and trials, and if you want to pretend to be, you know, a shaman, stroke magician, or, you know, druid, whatever you want to call it, then you wouldn't want a reality, because I'm telling you, there's days I don't fucking want it. I've lost everything, almost entirely everything, at one point or another in my life. I've had it stripped, beaten out of me, you name it. All of the normal things that many people take for granted, almost entirely absent. And yeah, I'm so fucking lucky. You know, I've had beautiful girlfriends, beautiful, pretty boys. I've had adventure, insight. I've spoke with gods and goddesses. I've journeyed into the spirit world. I've known a deep friendship, although very sparse, few and far between. But, you know, I've played music live. I live a very physical life, you know, fit and, you know, in touch with the land and the fresh air. You know, I've been to, you know, special places, you know, including, you know, in Giza in Egypt itself. Had, you know, many experiences, and yet, you know, I mean, I've got children that I love and adore. They're still very young at the moment, you know, which I need to stick around for and do everything that I can for. So, you know, there's always this interplay going on between how lucky you are and also being realistic about how fucking difficult everything's been. And I agree with the sentiment, never say anything that makes you weak. Because I'm telling you, like, I appreciate that, you know, any human being can be broken. It's a mixture of bad luck and circumstance. But when you know 100% without a shadow of a doubt that something of you passes on into an eternal realm of light, shadow, possibilities, other intelligences, archetypal forces. You know how, short a human life is. I gave someone else some advice in the last few days when they said how depressed they were. I said, start working out. They said, oh, I am. I said, well, meditate then 20 minutes twice a day, the most strictest observation of thoughts till the only thing that exists is the conscious awareness, the watcher. And then whatever misery is left over, use that as divine providence, as fuel for your mission. So that's what I do. I had a dream, vision. I was in a prison cell for the night, and I saw many, many birds, like a flock of birds in the sky, like starlings. And then, as is quite often the case in, contact experiences, it's an explicit knowing as opposed to an actual voice, quite often. And what was communicated was, not everyone makes it. Look at this flock of birds. They're all, just doing what they do, struggling. Not everyone makes it. It's a little bit like that, seeds landing on rocky ground thing, And I don't want to be one of the ones that doesn't make it. I'm not going to be. And a little while later, considering it was silent in the cell, I was asked, do you want to go out and sit in the exercise yard? So I did. And when I went and sat out in the exercise yard, there was just this massive flock of starlings, like flying around and landing on this kind of like netted roof that was slightly open to the air. I could hear them all flying around. It's weird. It's like, God, didn't know you were there, but I saw you, here I am. Asked for a pencil, so they gave me a pencil. Probably worried about what I was going to do with it. So I drew out a circle on the ground, went through a series of, prayers, rituals, deep meditation, and within 24 hours, the whole thing was resolved. To my satisfaction, I was out again in the open air. But not without consequence. Whatever way you look at things, whatever way you square things, you go to the opposite principle and you find, an equal and opposite truth, or something that embellishes where you were originally standing. You can worship a God of, light and love and all this kind of stuff. Some of us just happen to be born of a more saturnine disposition. And so, for instance, a strong Mercury can see many happy and adventurous days. And, a lot of laughing, joking and, especially when you add in that Martian kick. And but at the end of the day, death is a part of life. Darkness is a part of the big picture. And eventually, the whole human race will be extinct. This planetary system will no longer exist. mankind will very likely, I mean, even if, I don't believe we'll make it beyond the solar system, but even if we do, there always has to come a point where, you know, everything ends. You know, everything has its... Just extend that out to the, you know, the universe itself, what we, you know, what little we know about it, you know. I think that's all just going to stay like that and just keep expanding, and, you know, it's going to change, of course it is. But that doesn't mean that the lives we live now and everything that's going, doesn't mean that it's not important. But you've got to get it in perspective. Everything comes to an end. But there is a dimension of eternity whereby everything that happened coalesces and goes on in some, you know, to quote, you know, I love that, in some mysterious way. What's his name? Manly P. Hall. In some mysterious way. Yeah. Because I've been there, I've seen it, I know it in my heart, and it's more real to me than all the fucking trivial bullshit that we have to, you know, get caught up in on a daily basis. Although I enjoy some of that too. Look, that's what I'm saying, let's not be extreme about everything, but this notion of death and endings, of the gateway to the ancestors, it's not a pretty thing, it's not all love and light, but someone needs to do it, someone needs to look into that area. And, you know, I would say for instance, people that say, you know, like left-hand path and all this kind of thing, you know, it's still an extreme. It's I don't personally, put it this way, I can see the way things are, I can perceive the way things are stretching out for me, but I don't see it as just or agree with it. I'm saying, in the same way you have an, you know, in the natural world, everything's fighting to survive and bad shit happens and good things happen, and it's mostly a fucking lot of grief, right? Same thing as you go out into the spirit world as you extend further. You know, there are gods and goddesses and spiritual creatures that they have a particular dominion and a particular knowledge set, but they don't know everything, and they're doing what they need to do. And, you know, you go further up the tree. I like to think about the, you know, the wider reality in the form of Yggdrasil. You know, I get a strong instinct, and, you know, from things that I've seen and experienced, that that's a, you know, a good model to use, you know. I like the analogy of a seed falling from the sky, being buried in the earth, and then a plant growing up, and then the leaves are bathed in this kind of radiant light of the sun. It's like you have to go all the way down, you know, where do you come from, you know? So it's like return to the source, you know. But it's not all fun, is it? It's not fair, it's not enjoyable, it's not correct. And I would say I'm in slight opposition and rebellion, you know. And yet I want to live, I want to survive, because why would I not? Why, you know, I don't, you know, the ego, the, you know, the sense of, you know, I don't know, personal destiny or whatever you want to call it. So I would say it's a very pragmatic working class approach towards even spirituality. It's like, pull your fucking sleeves up, son, get stuck in. You know, we don't like this, but we got to do what we got to do. Right? It's a little bit like that. So I'm going to carry that rebellion and that sense of, you know, I'm seeing it from both sides, you know, and there's a deep sadness in that land at the death of the you know, the culture, the landscape. It resonates with my own losses sense of loss, my own, you know, and then you've got all these resonances going on, you know, at the same time. So I'm in a particular position where I can be the first person to tell you, hand on heart, you know, I know who she is, entry level. I know who she is. Not only do I know her, but she stays in my house over the winter. She comes to me when I'm sick. She comes to me in psychedelic visions. Sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I'll see her walking through the woods. I've experienced her presence in the landscape, in the home. I've gone out of my way to deepen that relationship. And the particular part of this video where I'm there in the rain, for me, that is the moment where I make a grand gesture and the gate is now open. It was a piece of music as magic that opened the door after, you know, a strange, you know, thread of destiny, if you like. And then many experiences I was given. I will repeat myself many times. I was given, you know, a specific initiation ritual to carry out, which I did. And I don't need to be Mr. Spiritual, perfect, fucking, you know, meditating all day, going about everything. You know, I want to fuck. You know, say for instance, you know, I'm left enough to, you know, believe that, you know, you should be able to fall in love with who you want and, you know, do what you want as long as you're not hurting anyone, and let's just all be human and kind to each other. But I'm right enough to say, hey, fucking, let's have some fucking border control and some, you know, rules going on and some dignity, and let's preserve as opposed to flatten, you know. And yet I'm neither, because fuck you on that side, fuck you on that side, you're all full of shit. And, you know, it's like someone in the Roman Empire complaining about, oh, the empire's falling to bits. Yeah, fuck me, here we go again. And yet, like I say, even in the face of that, you know, micro to macro extinction events, if you like, endings, something carries on. We should do our best to preserve what little there is left of the deep, you know, the deep past of the UK and Europe, of course, but I'm here. I'm looking after my own garden, if you like, you know, because something of that resonates in eternity. I will tell my story. I will bring back what I can. My relationship, you know, I hope will deepen and continue. And I'm sure there will be revelations and discoveries. And it's not necessarily about having a, you know, a physical proof or anything. It's about laying this out, laying it down, leaving it behind me. And part of me doesn't fucking want to, because it's a little bit embarrassing. Like, how the fuck, where do you begin? Fuck me. But I'm compelled, I'm driven. Oh, you know, feel sorry, get the violins out, you know, poor tortured artist. You know, don't, because I'm a fucking cunt as well, I tell you. And I don't fucking want it. But it's coming. I can, you know, I know, actually, no, I'm not even going to mention names, but I will leave that for later. I just know that I have to do this for all the right reasons. And yeah, my original point to this section was, you think you're a shaman? Do you really know what that entails? Huh? Because if you did, if I could just put in you just a moment, you just sense, you just feel, you know, eternity just there, okay? And then the finite, which is where everything is centered in this physical life. In order to be opened up in this way, it's hardship, it's trials, it's initiation, it's pain, okay? So go out, you know, and rattle your little rattle and do all your little songs, yeah? But I'm telling you, I didn't want this, it just happened. And I don't even want to be making this video, I don't want to be talking about it, but I know I have to. So my children will understand, because there's something, because I need to tell, I need to communicate what she wants me to communicate, or what I should communicate, you know, because it's important, and because that sense of loss resonates with my own sense of loss. And I don't want it to be just like, you know, blown out like a fucking candle. Yeah, it lives on in the eternal, but it's also important, you know, where we are now, to, you know, to preserve and to, you know, to understand and explore and hold on to, you know, what we can. Because, you know, modern life and all that, you know, we are a biological robot, is fucking horse shit. You cannot escape the, you know, the truth. Sooner or later it's going to come bite us in the ass. And yeah, we're all heading towards mass extinction. But the Gladiator quote, "What we do in life echoes in eternity." I'll leave you with that one. Where's the fucking off button? Oh, fuck me. There it is.